Could you tell me today, can you commit here today that your department will not withhold federal funding from hospitals or doctors who refuse to provide the gender-affirming care that you are, mandating if it violates their religious beliefs?
So now, Congresswoman, recognize you're going somewhere completely different. First, you started talking about how a doctor should have the rights to not offer particular care. Then you stretch it out to provide for the system-wide services.
Yes, you've put out this guidance.
Very different.
You've put out this guidance, and doctors do need to know.
Yes.
What are you going to do if they refuse to provide this care?
A doctor, if that doctor has religious objections, that doctor, under these rules, is not required to offer the care.
Okay, so you're committing here today that you will not withhold federal funding.
Doctors don't get federal funding, ma'am.
But the hospitals do.
So now talk to me about the hospital.
Are you saying that
Don't confuse the two.
Okay.
A doctor's not a hospital.
But the doctors are working in these hospitals. Are you going to say today, are you committing that you will not withhold federal funding from those healthcare facilities?
If a healthcare facility is violating the law and not providing the service they're required to,
we
they are
knew
not entitled
that you
to the
would
resources.
Withdraw federal funding.
That was Mary Miller questioning HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra about withholding funding from hospitals that don't do what the administration wants them to do as far as their leftist ideology goes. This is a prime example of why federal power needs to be reduced dramatically, and this is exactly why the founders had a framework where power was consolidated within the states and it was severely limited when it comes to the federal government. Basically, if a hospital refused to do surgery on a so-called transgender person, then the federal government can withhold funding from that particular hospital, thus giving the hospital no autonomy and not allowing it to make any decisions other than decisions that are approved by the federal government. All of these policies, or the direction of the actual departments, are going to change president by president. So there's absolutely no consistency, and it leads to a confusing and an oftentimes tyrannical system of doing business. You also have the Biden administration changing the definition of Title IX in order to force schools into allowing so-called transgender people, aka men, compete against women in sports.
Biden administration expanding Title IX protections. Title IX prohibits discrimination based on gender. Well, for LGBTQ and pregnant students now included under Title IX, the new rule requiring schools to protect students from all sex discrimination, including childbirth, and terminating or recovering from a pregnancy. It also prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and sex characteristics in federally funded education programs. The Biden administration is also expanding the definition of sexual harassment. These new rules, we're told, take effect August 1st.
As a reference to the sort of ideology and actions that they're pushing, this was during a hearing last year with AOC talking about Boston Children's Hospital and libs of TikTok, followed by one of my favorite political clown word moments, which is Nebraska State Senator Michaela Cavanaugh losing her mind over her allegiance to mental illness.
Ms. Navaroli, are you familiar with the account libs of TikTok?
I have heard of it from the news, yes.
Mr. Roth, are you familiar with this account?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Are you aware that from August 11th to August 16th, that account posted false information about Boston Children's Hospital, claiming that they were providing hysterectomies to children?
A gender-affirming hysterectomy is very similar to most hysterectomies that occur. A hysterectomy itself is the removal of the uterus, the cervix, which is the opening of the uterus, and the fallopian tubes, which are attached to the sides of the uterus. Some gender-affirming hysterectomies will also include the removal of the ovaries, but that's technically a separate procedure called a bilateral oophorectomy. And not every gender-affirming hysterectomy includes that, and people who are getting gender-affirming hysterectomies do not have to have their ovaries removed.
They cannot let go of this obsession with fixating violence and inciting violence against trans and LGBT people, in addition to immigrants, in addition to women of color. This is a party that cannot pick on anyone their own size. And they are trying to co-opt an entire social media platform and use the power of this committee and of Congress in order to pursue a political agenda. I yield back.
We have parents who tell us that their kids, they knew from the minute they were born practically.
A good portion of children do know as early as seemingly from the womb. 33 people are going to vote for this because honestly, I don't know why they're going to vote for it. Because they're weak. They're going to hurt your kids because they're weak. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. That's what they're saying out there. They're standing in a circle in the rotunda saying that over and over again. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. Trans people belong here. We need trans people. We love trans people. You matter. You matter. And I am fighting for you. And I will not stop. I will not stop today. I will not stop tomorrow. You are loved. You matter. You belong here.
Women will die. Children are dying. It is your fault. It is your fault. And you are allowing it to happen. You do literally have blood on your hands, and if you vote for this, you will have buckets and buckets of blood on your hands.
Stop it. Get some help.